Good evening, everyone. Michael DeVine here, Gray Matters Radio. What's going on, everyone? I'm America's counselor. What's going on? I don't know why I'm so happy today. I think it's because maybe I'm actually feeling a little bit better. I've been feeling like shit the last so many kind of weeks with allergies and back, and I'm feeling like a little halfway decent, even though there's a lot of bad shit kind of going on in the world right now, so I shouldn't really be smiling, but at least I feel good. Of course, joined by my man, Armchair Quarterback Bill Reed. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Michael, how you doing, my man?
Obviously, I'm feeling kind of all right in light of all the shit we have going on today.
Well, I think the alcoholic beverage in your hand doesn't hurt.
Bourbon helps. You know, bourbon is the nectar of the gods. And of course,
how come you didn't tell me?
You know, Dad, I figured I drank enough of your booze for all the years. I figured that, when you move back, I'm going to have to hide all my booze because you're just going to catch up, and you're retired, so you can actually get away with it. So
that's right.
So that means if we have the professor, my dad, Richard DeVine. Hey, what's up, Dad? How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right considering our Eagles last night. It was like a MASH unit, man. Jeez.
It was a massacre.
Wasn't that a weird game? That was the weirdest game I think I've watched in I don't know how long. I mean, that was just odd.
It was weird. It really was. I mean,
to lose.
I thought for sure Wentz was going to go down on the one play with the concussion.
That rib shot. I mean, that rib shot was brutal. You can tell that hurt him because he was throwing. Yeah. I mean, he loosened up. But, I mean, seriously, to lose our two starting wide receivers, a third one to a concussion test, our second tight end. I don't know if you realize this, Dad, at the end of the second half, all they had available was two wide receivers and one tight end. Yeah. And they literally had our backup, I think, left guard playing tight end on one play.
Well, yeah, they had it on the TV Philadelphia Sports, and they said Ernst was actually giving them the signals where to play. Yeah, but the guys were playing in positions that they never practiced for. Wow. So Ernst was telling them where to be, and the one almost made the one catch. If you saw the one, he dropped it, but he almost had a touch on the one. But yeah, they said it was really they were getting down to the last man.
It was. I mean, honestly, like I've been really hard on Wentz in these slow starts, but I don't think you can categorize and put Wentz's like slow start in the Eagles to like just like it was last year, because I mean the fact that how many they lost, if anything, it's really impressive how close they kept it considering who was on the field. I mean,
look at already. You got Roethlisberger out now for the year.
Drew Brees.
Drew Brees is out now for at least 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, it was an ugly first 2 weeks.
There was somebody else that got hurt too, but.
It's like every weekend. It's like pick your poison,
Pick your poison.
Sam Darnold is out with mono. How's that even happen? Like, how's a grown man get mono? Imagine trying to explain it to your wife. Honey, I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened. After a long road trip, I came home with mono.
We were sharing a can of Coke. I mean, come on. Yeah. Oh, so all kidding aside, I mean, football is more our Armchair QB show. But come on, we have the professor on the air, and he is old. So I mean, I think he turned into
everyone's show.
Go Notre Dame. That's the only good thing. Go Notre Dame. Beat Georgia.
That's actually a decent game. But apparently my dad turns into a pumpkin after like 10:30, so he can only be the professor till like, I don't know, like 10:30
Well,
or something.
This is the latest I stay up every week is on this show, quite honestly. I'm in bed, the wife and I, 10:30, 11 o'clock, it's lights out, man. It just is. So.
Yeah, but we had to bring my dad in because, there's been a lot of news this week, and anytime it comes to foreign policy, Middle East, we can kind of just, chase our tails and act like we know what we're talking about, or we can actually bring people in that know what they're talking about. So I'll get right to it. So in case you've been hiding underneath a rock, apparently it seems like we're on, the war drum path to, with Iran, and, basically, long story short, in case you don't know what the hell's going on, there was a drone attack. And now these drone attacks is actually something intelligence communities have been talking about for a while now, that this is things that they were worried about. And so then basically it was like a drone swarm attack on one of the largest refineries in Saudi Arabia. It basically puts out, I think, half the world's or half the Middle East oil supply, basically, their refining capacity. And so it's been shut down. Initial reports are basically Iran denied it, and then basically Trump, Saudi Arabia all came out and said, even though they originated from
Yemen, wasn't it?
Yemen, yeah, from Houthi rebels, I believe, that they're all basically funded and weaponed and armed by Iran. And then apparently Iran basically came out, I think, right before we went on the air, saying that, well, actually, we're just defending ourselves. And then they took control of another boat in the Strait of Hormuz. So all right, so here's
I think you got the Pearl Harbor.
Well, that's what they said. It's like a Pearl Harbor moment, or is it a Pearl Harbor, or is it a Gulf of Tonkin moment? That's what I want to know. And so, what the hell's going on? Because none of this is making sense to me of why Iran would do this, given just the state of everything, given the fact that even with oil, we're not even getting our oil from them anymore. So help me understand that. What is going on over there?
But I think the key is yes, the United States doesn't get as much oil, but when you look at what Europe gets going out of the Strait of Hormuz and all that, and also the commitment by the United States to keep the Strait of Hormuz open at that point, that puts us in direct conflict because, I think what we're really seeing right now is one, the U.S. has put so much sanctions. The Trump administration put so much economic sanctions. Plus, also they armed the Strait of Hormuz. Is that the thing that I'm looking at is if you look at Japan attacked the United States in 1941 because economically she was being strangled by the United States. So she had to do an act that would free her to be able to go into the West Indies, the Dutch East Indies, and get oil, rubber that we were not.
So we had an embargo on
them. Right. We scrapped steel, everything. I mean, Japan only had basically enough oil to operate for less than a year when she attacked Pearl Harbor. Okay. But I think you take a look at Iran. I think Iran is going through almost the same things. She's trying to keep this picture that she's not hurting. I think the sanctions have really started to hurt her. And what she's trying to do is, if she can start, she's going after the world's oil supply. If she can't do the Hormuz, if they go after the supply, they can start strangleholding and increase their leverage so that the European nations are going to come together and go against the United States to say, ease up the sanctions.
But why are they, I guess, why are they denying it then? You think that only makes sense if they were owning it? Why are they denying it, basically?
Well, I think basically is they're trying to humiliate the United States and making them look like a fool, because basically Trump has got himself down the alley, and which way does he turn to go back, or what? What's he going to do? So if he's saying, the U.S. intelligence is saying, yes, these things did come from Iran. They were directed by Iran. They were funded and all that. And the Iranians are going to come back and say, who, me? Okay. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything. So now all of a sudden, in the eyes of the world, but you got the exact what they wanted. They have curtailed the world's oil supply. You took 5 million barrels of oil a day out of the system. It is already having massive repercussions economically in Europe, the United States, China. The whole place is starting to feel it. That is a war of terrorism right now, of economic reversal, to which now, if they can strangle the Saudis and all that stuff, and now show how vulnerable the Saudi oil fields are and the source of supply, I don't think this is just not one attack. I think you're going to start seeing some other attacks. But the key being is, what have they tried to force the Trump administration to do? He's talked big, and I'm not saying I'm against him, whatever, but he's now in a position where he has no national security advisor. He's running the show.
And they timed that.
They're running it.
Yeah.
And now when he goes back and says, I'm locked, I'm loaded, he's got all this military, they're forcing him into a position to where, is he going to fight?
I mean, do they want a war? I mean, I can't imagine them wanting a war, because no matter,
I think they're saying they don't believe. I think they believe that he's just a bunch.
They're just trying to make him look like an idiot, basically.
He's just talking the talk.
And he's going to back up, and then here comes the other part: is the European community, nations are saying, well, we're not totally convinced that your intelligence is correct, that these drones came from Iran. So now, if Trump, is he going to back up, or is he going to walk himself into a war in which, as the Iranians say, they can withstand? What does it do to the world? Now you got NATO. Yeah. Even NATO is now saying, we're now getting worried of what Trump's going to do.
Well, he's a loose cannon. It changes by day.
But there's no moderating forces. Everybody's is a bobbling Chihuahua doggy. They're bobbing their heads to whatever he wants. You don't have anybody there now that's saying, back up. You don't have Mattis there. You don't have, and I don't like John Bolton, believe me.
Yeah, Bolton was a hawk.
Bolton wanted the war.
Yeah, he's a chicken hawk.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he wanted the war.
Yeah. He wanted to fight the Iranians right off the bat, and then you got Trump saying, well, maybe we'll talk to you without any preconditions.
But then he knocked Obama for doing that. He said it was weak. And we were talking about this last week. Bill and I were arguing that Trump is literally doing everything he nailed Obama for. And now he's like, well, no preconditions. And he literally railed against Obama for doing that it was weak. It's like, and I don't understand how he's getting away with this with his supporters doing the same thing. Tonight,
he's saying, I never said that. It's not preconditions.
It's like, you're on tape.
Well, you just said
you
that.
Literally are on tape.
No. You guys must have heard it wrong.
But this is where it gets interesting. And this is where I think, and I'm really curious now. I'm a conspiracy theory guy, and so part of my thinking is that it's like, this seems like the sum of all fears, like a Tom Clancy novel, where basically the United States and Russia were duped into fighting a war against each other by a third party who basically, was I think in a movie it was Germany that was trying to basically get the two superpowers to destroy themselves.
It was neo-Nazis. It wasn't Germany itself.
The white supremacists.
So to me, it comes across like somebody is goading the United States and Iran to get in a war with each other. Now this is where it gets interesting. So Tulsi Gabbard, she was running for president. She is a congresswoman from Hawaii, just dropped out. War veteran, was in Afghanistan, very decorated. This is what she said today. It's really interesting. She was responding to Donald Trump tweeted that Trump indicated that Iran is behind the recent attack in the Saudi oil facilities and that the United States will respond after hearing from the Saudi government, quote, under what terms we would proceed. Tulsi Gabbard then tweeted back, in quotations, Trump awaits instructions from his Saudi masters. Having our country act as Saudi Arabia's bitch is not America first.
Right.
Well, they have the oil. What choice do we have?
But the whole point of us having fracking and all this, because we produce more oil than Saudi Arabia, the whole point was so we don't have to get involved, and here we are getting involved again.
Well, you know that,
though.
Even if our resources are untouched.
You got a couple things starting to brew over there. One is you got the Israeli elections. You've got a very, a war hawk in Netanyahu, who has, really basically was one of the catalysts for the United States to end the Iran nuclear deal. He was never for it when even Obama basically told him, we'll do what we want to do. You got him running for election. You've got the United States on one side. You've got the Russians, who are a major oil exporter.
They're making a play now in Syria and all that.
They are aligned more towards the Iranian Shia grouping, and you've got the United States, who is aligned with the Israeli, the Saudi, and the Sunni.
Doesn't it scream though what we did to the Russians in the Afghan wars? Isn't it totally plausible that they are the ones feeding the technology to these rebels? They have people on the ground. They got the intelligence. They got the drone technology. To me, it screams, how do you get? They are playing the what we did to them in the 80s. We bankrupted them through all these proxy wars. That's what it seems like. Yeah,
they did the SDI initiative.
Yeah. And think about Putin is about payback. He wants to restore the Russian, pride. He wants to restore that former Soviet kind of glory.
You talked about putting back the Soviet
Union. And there's no better way to do it than to do dirty to the United States like what we did to them. And that's I don't know.
Well,
am I off base here, Pops?
I look at it back at this. Who has the most to gain if
Russia.
The United States would take Iran?
Russia.
Even just bomb them as a penalty would be the Russians.
Yeah.
Okay. Who would then be the bigger exporter and start controlling the thing of oil? The Russians.
Yeah.
All right. Who would have the most to gain if Iran? Because the one thing that's going to happen is sitting right there, and the United States is now talking about a new mutual defense treaty with Israel. Okay. Which then, if that happens and you go to them, then you've got sitting on the Gaza is Hamas, the Lebanon and Syria, you got Hezbollah, all Iranian proxy armies and organizations, fed, serve everything from Iran. That opens up a major, major issue in the Middle East, which means if they could go Trump, and I look at Putin is no dummy. He's doing to him what Ronald Reagan did to Gorbachev and them. He's leading Trump down a path, okay? And this is just my speculation, to where he knows Trump better than anybody else. He reads him, and he knows at some point, if you get him to the point, he's not going to be able to back up. He's going to have to do something or retreat. If he retreats, who wins? The Russians.
Yeah.
If he attacks, who wins?
Well, Dick, let me ask you this, because there's some people who will swear to you that that Putin and Trump are buddies, and that Putin pulls the strings in the Trump administration, helped get him elected, and you've heard it all too. I mean, I guess my question is, if that's true, or if they are supposedly they see eye to eye, as they seem to, at least in public, why would Putin? I would think that Putin would if he wanted Trump to get elected, would be so he could work with Trump, so he could I don't know. It just kind of seems like, and I get what you're saying, it makes sense, but I kind of feel like, why would Putin want to work against Trump when he could work with Trump if they get along? Was it just about, like you said, revenge from the 80s?
He's an ex-KGB.
Yeah. There are no
Make
friends.
Your friends and I'm going to destroy. Don't trust them. And I mean, a lot of congressmen, John McCain, all those guys were saying, don't trust Putin. He's ex-KGB. He was a colonel. He was in East Germany when the Soviet Union fell, and he was the head of the KGB in East Germany when it fell and the wall came down. He did not have any idea if he was going to survive, and he never forgave the United States for what happened there. Plus, also, he never forgave the United States for humiliating the Russians, the U.S. when it fell. He has said that on occasion. So, if you could find a dummy and you could manipulate him and thinking I am your friend and we're doing this, but you are manipulating him down, okay, that would be what the KGB would do. And that's what I say. George W. said, "Oh, I look Putin in the eyes, and he is a great person."
Then was like a 6 months later, he is pure evil.
Yeah, but my thing is Putin is manipulating the puppet string.
Yeah,
I see.
But the key factor is going to be the one. What happens if he does? Now you've got Iran, and Putin is even doing Iran. Okay, he knows he's controlling. He's the puppet master.
I think he's controlling the rebels. Because I don't think they're too. I think the Iranians are too proud to admit that they don't have control over what's happening. I think they're denying it, but I think these rebels, I mean, that technology they had, 'cause people were like, well, you can have drones that that you can buy at the store, and it's like, no. That technology,
these were,
they can max hold a pound or a couple pounds. The explosives that this thing had was far advanced. It traveled a far distance. They had advanced technology, and if everyone's denying, I think, Dad, you say it, the only people that win is Russia. Like, nobody wins in this situation.
Well, if you remember, it was about 2 years ago, it may have been less or whatever, is the Iranians captured one of the advanced American drones intact.
That was a big deal.
Totally
they had
intact,
the technology,
which was an embarrassment.
Yeah.
At that point that they got this drone, and they even showed it. So now you reverse engineer that technology, you give it to the Russians, they reverse technology it. Now the Iranians have this sophisticated technology.
Well, the thing is,
Dad, what they did though.
Well, Dad, do you remember though when that drone went down? Wasn't one of the rumors that it was actually taking control because the U.S. lost control of it, and that the rumor was that who had the technology to hack our encrypted communication system? It was Russia, and this was Russia was way into Syria.
Well, and who has the technology to have been able to do it? The Iranians.
Only Russia. Only Russia has that technology.
And that's what I'm saying.
And why
this was so coordinated, this attack.
Yeah. And that's where I think you look at this, like, it really is. You're looking at going like, nobody has a chance to win. It's almost like now. Here's the thing: is why is Israel so quiet on this? Saudi Arabia is kind of quiet, but why is Israel so quiet on this? That's peculiar.
Well, I think they're sitting there still waiting out their election between Netanyahu. Okay, they're finding out where they're going to be in position. I think the second part that they're worried about is if something goes on there, that's going to open up the Iranians' proxies to come after Israel. It's because the Iranians will give a darn, won't care about the United States. This will be an all-out holy jihad against the state of Israel to Iran.
So what would actually happen? It's a good point. Like, I'm actually curious with all the pacts that we all have with each other.
Well, they'd attack Israel. We defend Israel. I mean, that's what we would do, right? I mean, that's...
well, what actually would happen? So let's say we attack Iran, and then of course they're going to retaliate. And now we're in a full out. What actually happens from that point forward? What do you think? Like, between the treaties that we have, what do you foresee is happening then after that?
Well, I mean, we stockpile so much military equipment there that the Israelis can use. If it's there, they can't use it for offensive, but they can use it for defensive. A lot of the equipment that we used in the Iraq wars and that, rather than bring them home, they pre-positioned them in Israel so that they could use it from ammunition, Apache helicopters to everything. But the key that I sat there and I was looking at going, well, if this happens, does that throw then the United States that has to support Israel if she gets totally attacked? Well, Trump has started to talk about an altogether new defense treaty. Do they know something that it's going to be even stronger than what they have? The other part, I sat back and I was thinking, could this really be something to where if you look at Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen and the world opinion with all the indiscriminate bombing, the Omanis withdrew their army. The Omanis were supplying the manpower on the ground to fight the war.
That's right.
They withdrew. They withdrew their military. That left Saudi Arabia now with the thing was, well, I've been supplying the Air Force and I've been supplying to the Omanis, but now what do I do? Okay. So I sat there and went, whoa, could we be getting into a situation that it may not even be Russia the one? Could it be the Saudi Arabians looking for a way to
that was
say,
another thought I had. Are
they
trying to goad us
land
into
power
it? Yeah.
in? Because we're not going to fight. We're not going to fight. We don't want to get our hands dirty. We want somebody else. And if we instigate, and could they have attacked their own. I mean,
I've been thinking Saudi Arabia
scenarios to say they may know Trump better than we know anybody.
Saudi Arabia. I mean, think about it. Saudi Arabia would love for Iran to not exist, and the thing is, how ironic would it be for we've been goading at wars for the last 50 or 60 years and getting other people to fight it for us. And they would know if we were attacked. So if we launch a skirmish, Iran will do a basically Hail Mary. They're going to try to bomb a lot of our U.S. carriers in the region. We know once that happens, now it's a full out war.
Oh, when that happens, it doesn't matter who starts it or who did it. Yeah, if they start bombing carriers.
I guess I never really thought that Saudi Arabia has a lot to gain too, because then if we neutralize Iran, then they're going to go, well, tell you what, we're going to police it for you. We'll gladly take it over because we know you don't want to get in that skirmish.
We'll just go ahead and get in there.
Well, everybody remembers the Iran-Iraq war.
Actually,
Reagan committed the U.S. Navy to escort the ship. Okay, which in de facto he supported Iraq.
Yeah, wasn't Rumsfeld the one who made the decision to arm and
there's a great video of Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein.
And then you get to the point where now the United States was providing all the naval to protect all the ships during the Iran-Iraq war, and then basically was saying to Iran, we're against you. We're supporting Iraq at that point, which Iran has never forgiven us for that too, let alone taking over the embassy, but they have never forgiven us for there. But, as I said, I'm not a scholar, I'm not all that, but I just was putting scenarios together saying who really could be the winners in all this, and could
we have two hypotheses.
Saudi Arabia launched drones, hit their own area, and now this causes the world to come to there. Because remember, it's really actually a holy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. They hate each other.
Yeah,
each one wants to wipe each other out.
Yeah,
and if the Israelis got involved, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
Okay, because then the Israelis would be against Hezbollah, Hamas. That would cover Syria, Lebanon, to Gaza. Egypt would probably there. But now you've got Iraq, which really became, after we withdrew, more influenced by Iran, than by Saudi Arabia. It ends their whole, they become then the political powerhouse in that region.
Well, I think what scares me more than anything is that you have this wing of the Conservative Party who very much is this very far-right Christian conservatives where they basically are itching for the Armageddon to happen, and so much to the fact that it's almost like they're willing to do things to almost make that holy war happen. And it almost is like, because you have to look at me, if we're sitting here hypothesizing that like Occam's razor, the most likely solution, the most likely or an obvious one is the most plausible, then with intelligence community, they're all sitting there saying the same thing. So why is it that we don't have anyone in that intelligence community sitting there going, hey, I don't think any of these guys are doing it. I think we're being goaded into a war. Do they know it and don't care, just looking for an excuse now to, set the region on fire? Dad, of all your experience with everything you know about the region, how do we walk back from this? Like, what's the solution? If you're Donald Trump, what do you do?
Now, what do you do?
The key is, I just hope saner. We're walking down an alley, and pretty soon you're not going to be able to do a U-turn.
Oh, do you think we're at that point already? That's the real thing.
Something's going to have to. Yeah. Now, one is, I'm going to use force. Two, then the other part is that I blink. Just look at the Cuban Missile Crisis.
That's his ego. His ego, can he handle the blink?
Khrushchev blinked. And what did it do? It shows the part of the weakness that there was no resolve. And I think that's what I think we're going to be going down that alley, and the key being is what happens. Which, if he blinks, does that tell the Iranians, we can pursue this policy, we can build the nuclear weapons, and nobody's going to do anything about it? We'll be able to close down. We'll own the strait. We'll own the access to world oil. or does somebody launch preemptive strikes, punishment, punitive strikes, which now means now we're technically at war. Once you drop the first bomb on their territory, now you're in a jihad. It's a war. I mean,
aren't we already kind of in a jihad holy war? I mean,
it's
the Ayatollah.
Well, I just say it'll even be more. It'll be there. But here's the other key: if the Ayatollahs are just hanging on to their country, and there's we all know they've been very effective in putting down political unrest.
Yeah, but their economy is so bad they don't have that power anymore.
If they would even get to the war, does that now cause the people of Iran to raise up? Does it cause the rebellions?
Or does people rally around the Ayatollah more because you're
to where the Ayatollah? I mean, we could be.
I think it's a different time.
So many variables going on.
I mean, it's a completely different time, though, because if you watch Anthony Bourdain when he went to Iran, I mean, you see people are a lot more self-aware
I agree.
than what they were.
Well, let me ask you guys this real quick. Is it possible that the answer here is the simplest one? It's that it is just Iran who does not like the United States.
Yeah.
They call for Islamic jihad against Western, especially the United States. Is it possible that that's just what it is, and it's just another escalation? Because part of me thinks that Iran, there are some people in Iran, I think, that do want to go to war with the United States, with Israel, with everyone in the West they can, and I think
hardliners. Yeah.
They kind of want that Armageddon
but even in that case, but what's the whole point of getting energy independent, to where even if we didn't have any of their oil, we are fine? That's the whole point of that, to where they could sit there and say whatever it is that they want, but they're over there, they have nothing that can hurt us. Not like it was in the 90s and even early 2000s, right? Mm-hmm. So I just don't understand what is the point of all this energy independence, where still they can sit there and saber rattle at us when let's be honest, if we go to war, it's not going to be a good situation. It's just not.
No.
Because Dad, honestly, let's say it is Iran. Let's say it's that case scenario. It's the most, the straight up one, right? And let's say they keep pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. What if they attack one of our ships? Then all of a sudden, we have to attack. What happens? Knowing what you know about the region, do you think is it possible to have a regional war with Iran, like a straight up regional war in Iran, without pulling everybody in?
The answer to that is no.
That's the thing I'm scared of.
It's going to pull everybody. Look at the Iran-Iraq war of the 80s. It pulled in Europe. We had to escort the area because of the oil and the small passageway to get to 80% of the oil. I think the other part is there too is trying to put my thought together. Lost it there for a minute, but
it's a witching hour.
You've got the UN meeting this week, and there's been talk to where, Trump to meet with the president of Iran and the delegation to talk, and then the preconditions and everything else. Are they also in such a desperate shape of holding on that knowingly Trump wouldn't talk to them, but if they can put it to there where the pressure comes from Europe and everybody else around there to say, talk to them, see what kind, is that the motive there, which starts calming it down? Because, let's face it, the Israelis have already shown to the world that the Iranians were making nuclear weapons when they displayed from their intelligence the storage areas. Okay. And so the Iranian position is saying, well, we didn't violate the treaty. Well, guess what? The Israelis proved them.
Yeah.
It's there. They've been doing it. So in a way that legitimized Trump.
That was the ultimate reason probably why Trump then tore it up. He's like, dude,
they're not
holding on to it. They're not doing their shit.
It's like the IMF treaty. when the original intermediate were there, that was between the United States and Russia. Okay, so and again, I'm not a Trump person, but I really firmly believe he was right, because you had the Russians building weapons in direct conflict. We were not. We were researching, but we weren't developing. But guess who was out there building intermediate range ballistic missiles? And they weren't even part of the treaty, but they're going helter-skelter. It was China.
Yeah. They're the quiet ones developing all that.
So you're saying there, if I were there saying, the only person that lost in this treaty was us. The Russians started rebuilding and deploying, and you had the Chinese out here doing the whole thing. So why don't we just rip it up? It doesn't mean anything, and we'll all come back to a table at some point. And now the Russians are scared, not scared, but they're warning, is because the U.S. from their research is now is going to be deploying new intermediate. So I'm going, these places are starting to back themselves into corners right now as far as where do we go? Because at some point, they're talking one thing, we're talking another, they're talking another. Maybe they're just as afraid as all of us of getting into a war. Because if they get into a war, does that mean there's a rebellion within inside Iran that they're not going to be able to control? Yeah, the Republican Guard, but how much can they do if all of a sudden they have to come up against the, I hate to say it, the U.S. it will be a use of a massive firepower.
And that's the one thing I will say.
No Air Force or anything.
Well, and that's the thing. Like,
I don't know.
And this is what the one thing I'll say. Like, I don't like Trump. Anyone who listens to the show that I'm not a huge fan of the guy, right?
Wait, you're not?
Yeah, I know, surprising, right? Not necessarily his policies, but his style, right? The one thing I'm going to give him credit for, though, even though I don't think he meant to do this, I really think anything he's done, it's like he accidentally does it and takes credit for it, because he's so unpredictable. Everything people have been doing to either manipulate or take advantage of the fact no one wants to get into a war, it's disrupted the entire system. And it's everybody is everyone's trying to gain their foothold now, but then there's all these crushing sanctions. The global economy in a lot of those areas is awful. You have Saudi Arabia, who basically has been very open about, we're getting away from oil. We don't want anything to do with oil anymore. You have Israel, who has their own internal turmoil. Iraq's kind of interestingly quiet. Syria is just kind of Swiss cheese. I mean, there's not much left of it. The Russians, it's a Russian, colony now, basically.
Well, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, you have London, you have Germany. Merkel almost got voted out. You have Macron, who, you have all these people. All the old guard is getting pushed out. There's been a global destabilization, which a lot of people argue that's what Russia's intent was. If you disrupt the vacuum, or that you disrupt the unified kind of global community that kept them in a corner, the only way, it's I don't think Russia wants to take over the world. They just want an equal place at the table now. And the only way they would get that if they disrupted everybody, which it was successful. But that's the thing, that what happens when Russia gets back to where they want, and then it's all right, well, now it's going to hurt all of us, these trade wars, the energy wars. What happens when they get to that place now and go, all right, can we all get along? Now we're all equal now. We all have enough food. We all get a seat at the table. And it's interesting what's happening. And
no
I think
hard feelings, comrade?
Well, it seems like you haven't even mentioned China.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing. Where's China fit in all this?
China.
I think China's just content to sit back and just be like, hey, how about it, guys?
Yeah.
Out there.
Yeah. Well, they got a lot of their own problems.
Well, they manipulate their own currency. I mean, they do a lot of things to help their economy.
But they're starting to feel the cracks and the pressure, though, too.
The tariffs are hurting it, too. I mean, we're all being hurt. It's just the problem is China's economy is going to be propped up by their currency manipulation.
Sure.
They've been at this breakneck pace to grow their middle class so they can turn them all into consumers. Problem is, though, it's that they even realize there's a limitation to what they can get away with, and it's just going to be interesting what's going to happen of all this.
I mean, they got to. I mean, and I'm not, as you know, I'm not an Obama fan either. I did not like Obama. Did not like the way he did.
Bill, you hated that Iran deal.
I didn't care for that.
Yeah, I mean,
not at all.
I never understood it that much, to tell you the truth, what he was,
The
other
money
than
transfer even was a little hokey.
It wasn't that you can't make those kinds of deals per se. It was the fact that it was made with the Iranians. I'm sorry, I don't trust them. I can't trust them. It's just there's too much history there, and everything just tells you know what? I feel like we've been duped over and over and over again. It was like the North Korea deal that we made, how many years ago? And they're like, oh, we promised we won't make nuclear weapons. And it was like, haha, surprise, we made them. Too bad. And I'm like, God, you always do this.
Every time I see the Iranian leaders and they're saying, well, we were never going to go, give me a freaking break.
Yeah. It was like making a deal with Dr. Evil or something.
Liar, your pants are on fire, but that's okay.
If we had made that deal with another country or someone else, I could have maybe gotten behind it. I don't know. It just seemed like with the Iranians, I was just like, I don't like this.
I still always come back and think, who really truly wins out of all this? And it still comes back to the Russians.
It's true, and that's the thing. So now that I'm gonna leave you on this one, we're gonna we could probably beat this one into the ground, But all right, so I'm gonna leave on this one. All right, so if Trump were listening, and you could tell him one thing, like, hey, listen, pay attention to this, hear this. What would be the one thing you would want to tell him to get him to maybe look at this thing a certain way to make the right decision? What would you tell him?
Jeez. Michael,
change the fluorescent
I really
light bulbs.
don't even know myself, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I think it is so complex, the players that are involved. You've got religions, you've got old, I'll tell you, who I think he was the one person that truly understood the Arab and the Jew. And that was Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was probably is probably the most knowledgeable person of the old rivalries between the biblical part. And the key being is everybody getting the right advice of what's really going on?
Yeah.
And are you really settling the problem? Is it oil? Is it territorial? And I think it's coming down to these are people that there's a hatred between, not only between Muslim to Jews in the state of Israel, but there's also a hatred amongst their own selves. And you're dealing
they
with
hate each other.
The Jewish element, you're dealing with the Sunni Arabs to the Shia Arab, and each one wants world domination. I mean, their common enemy is the state of Israel and the Jews. But this is not the case where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. This is where the one is, well, I hate him, but I hate you too.
Yeah.
And it's domination. It's totally. And that, these people do not care what path you're going down. So you've got to be so careful, because this is not going to be one in which you do it and then all of a sudden, no.
Yeah, this is
These
so
people will become
much bigger.
fanatical.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you read any of the histories of the battles between Iraq and Iran, which now you were Sunni Iraq against Shia Iran, all right? Those battles were bloody. Those battles were some of the most.
Well, mind you, they've also been now hardened through 15 years, 20 years now of insurgency battles against very.
Well, the Iranians had people without even weapons.
Yeah.
Going into the front line.
Yeah.
I mean,
popping them up full of amphetamines and morphine and shit. Yeah, dude. There's some
understand who you're going to go up against. That this isn't just like bombing Syria when they cross the red line, that you can bomb them and everything's going to be okay. No, this won't be. You're going to unleash a force that it's going to be a long war.
Yeah.
A bloody war, just like the Iran-Iraq. So if they're not looking at history, is what we all say as historians. If you don't study history, you're going to be doomed to repeat it.
That's
and I think they gotta watch the Iran-Iraq war, but that is what's. And if it wasn't for Rumsfeld, if it wasn't for the Navy escorting and cutting off Iran, I mean, that war would still be going on today.
And that's where you hope you have those people in there, you know, like, and that was one thing, like, Dad, you always kind of taught me, because I have, like, clients all the time, like, man, why do I got to study this shit? Because it's like, when things happen, when you don't know the history and context, people can tell you whatever it is that they want, and you're going to believe it. Having that knowledge and background and insight into how we even got here, what is all this about? It gives you the context to understand what's going on now. And so you hope that they have the right people around them to kind of go, you need to understand what's going on here, you know, because it almost reminds me of that scene in JFK where Joe Pesci's character, you know, is going off in that rant. He goes, man, not even the shooters know who pulled the trigger on Kennedy. Like, that's how I almost feel. It's like nobody really 100% knows. And that's the quagmire we're kind of in. But I mean, I think at least we got some hypotheses kind of rolling, and I think you at least helped to straighten out a little bit, Pops. So, you know.
Well, I'm just only speculating. I mean, I'd be doing something different there, but I mean, I've just sat back a little bit trying to figure out, you know, everything. And I'm trying to find, there's always got to be a winner. There's always somebody who wins in the whole game. And that's where I was sitting there going, well, then who could do this? Who could do that? To do what you're doing, a bunch of rebels. Now, could Hezbollah? Yes. Hezbollah is an organized army, and the Israelis know it. Okay? But this Houthi, I just don't see it. Yeah. It's got to come from somebody else.
And that technology, there's,
you know, are they goading? I mean, is somebody prodding the Iran? You know, to me, is there somebody's pulling the strings and people are being puppets? That's all I got.
Yeah, but it's crazy.
We'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely, Pops. Well, hey, man, you, as always, thanks so much for coming on, Dad. We appreciate for straightening all this out. I mean, it helps out a little bit. So basically, we're all fucked, but, you know, hey, at least if we're here next week, you know, go Eagles, okay?
Hey,
go
Dick.
Irish. Go Irish.
Hey, Dick, they're going to need you to... They're going to need you to re-enlist when this war breaks out. You don't mind, right?
I kept trying. Don't tell my dad that. I've been telling my dad for years.
Come on, you're a Vietnam vet. Come on, you've got combat experience.
For years, Bill, you're ruining all my years of PTSD work with my dad. I kept trying to tell him every year, Dad, Charlie called. They're not angry anymore.
That's how you overcome it. You go back into it. You're like Rambo, dude. You go right back into the shit and you kill everybody.
Don't listen to what
he can do it,
Dad. Don't listen to what he's saying.
Hey,
you know,
my bones hurt. No.
Agent Orange is not coming back. Agent Orange is not coming back.
Yeah.
All right, Pops. Well, hey, thanks so much. All right, we'll talk to you later. Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Pops.
Hey guys, you have a good one. Hey, what's it? 6 weeks? I'll be there.
That's true.
Ooh,
yeah. So you'll actually be in the studio next time.
Moving back.
I know. So we'll actually have you in the studio as the actual real professional. We'll get you like a blackboard and everything, Pops. Even get one of those little like, you know, like the jackets with like the little like, you know, the little corduroy little patches on it to look like one. So it'll be good, man.
Oh yeah, get me my indelible marker and get me an overhead.
Oh, dude, we're investing in video here on Gray Matters. All right, so we're gonna bring it. All right.
All right.
All right, Pops. All right, man. Bye.
All right, guys. Hey. Alligator, guys.
Later, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye.
So at least we figured out that there's a lot of different people involved, and we might be fucked, right? You know?
Mike, it's war. You know, it could be, you know, you hear people say it could be Russia, as we've talked about here, is that it could be the Saudis. You know, one of the conspiracies, which I don't really buy, but it's out there, is that it could be Israel themselves. You know, they want the United States to come in and, you know, but like we talked about, Israel would be in a flat out. They would get bombed, and they, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That would kind of be counterproductive, in my opinion. So, I think it's a combination of maybe a little bit of everything. Who knows? Honestly, we probably never will know. Like you said, it could be the Gulf of Tonkin again.
It's either going to be it's either Pearl Harbor or the Gulf of Tonkin. We'll never know.
Pearl Harbor, yeah, that was a good analogy. It is what it is. It's you know, I think anytime you have a lot of religious fanatics involved too. Is, you know, the United States does not have religious fanatics like that. Neither does Russia, neither does China. But when you start getting into countries that do have that, people that are in positions of power, that's when sometimes things just don't make sense. You can't always just be like, well, here's what they want. Well, you don't know what they want. Some of them want the end of the world. Some of them want this holy war, World War III Armageddon, because they think, in their religion that this is a good thing. So, I don't know that Iran wants war, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if the Ayatollah, for crying out loud, is death to the United States, death to Israel. He said this shit for years.
And that's true. I mean, and
maybe that's what they want. I don't know.
But I think, we always all right, on this show, we're always busting people's balls. We're always looking at all the bullshit that people talk about, if we throw all the, this is a time where it's we can't be having people acting like they really know what is going on, or because they read it on some think tank, because a Republican said, because it's because the wrong decision, as my dad said, my dad, he plays coy, acts well, I'm not an expert. I mean, the guy did kind of teach college, and
he's a professor.
The guy literally has 1,000 books on Middle East history, right?
I mean, he may or may not have done some work with some agency.
Yeah, I mean,
during the Vietnam. I don't want to mention.
He's being modest, right? But the reality is, it's when my dad is sitting there going and he isn't usually, he's not an alarmist. He's the guy when 9/11 happened, and he was literally the first phone call I made was to my dad going, "What the hell is going on?" Because if anyone was always going to give it to me straight of, "Do I need to be scared? What's going on?" And I remember my dad that day very vividly. I mean, he's like, "Hey, man, we're under attack." I mean, he is, he goes "We're all right, but I mean, this is going to be a new era. It's a new dawn." And, and I've always turned to him to go, "Hey, listen, what's going to happen?" He's never an alarmist. So when my dad's sitting there going "Listen, if we make the wrong decision, if this thing will turn into a regional war, and it is going to be bad. Nobody wins. Well, apparently Russia probably wins, but nobody wins in that, and we can't have that happen. So we need all the adults in the room. We need all the pundits to stay the fuck out. Anyone who thinks they knows what's going on to stay the hell out. Let them make the decisions and figure out what the hell is going on. Because if not, I mean, this is a very, very big deal, and I don't think I can even stress enough that it can go a lot of different ways, So I'm glad we were able to kind of talk about it, because it's less about, it's Trump, it's this, and it's no, let's talk about the region, let's talk about the history, let's talk about what we know, and then we have multiple hypotheses. And I think when you take somebody like my dad who knows a lot about that region, and I mean, I know a decent amount about it, poli-sci was my minor, when even he's going, it could be 3, 4, and even as we were talking, it was oh, wow, well, there's a whole other way of looking at it. That says a lot. That's how convoluted this is. So, I'm hoping we all make the right decisions. I'm hoping maybe that a lot of this is big power plays. People are desperate, and we'll kind of take a step back. But this is when politics gets real. We can sit there and joke around about, the debates and bullshit, right? This is real. This is really what our elected officials are there to do. And this is where it becomes very obvious of, if I make the wrong decision, people will die. Lots of people can die in this. So I'm hoping they make the right decision. Because we have to. I mean, it's the only thing that it comes down to. We have to make the right decision here. So I just hope that we kind of do. We were supposed to get to a lot of other things today, but we spent a little more time on it than normal. So I guess, we had other things like Purdue Pharma.
It was a big day.
I know it was. And we had Purdue Pharma taking the bitch way out and filing bankruptcy so they have to pay people. We're talking about what's more dangerous to Americans. Well, we have a war, and then we have fucking OxyContin maker, douchebags. And even in the same week where we find out they were funneling billions into offshore accounts, right? But I guess we'll have to cover that one.
We'll talk about that next, because I know you get fired up about that. As do
I heard that shit. I knew they were gonna do that.
We all have our triggers, so I think that's one of yours.
Corporate greed. And bullshit like that.
Corporate greed, but corporate greed at the expense of the average,
and no care at all.
No worries about the.
To me, how do you make America great again when you have so many corporations that are willing to kind of do that? It is just beyond me. It's they're just fucking raping this country dry for their own gain, and
I guess it could be worse. It could be the other way. We could have no successful corporations. We could be all dirt poor, and we could be. That's how I try to look at it.
You know what, man? I've been in some places in the world, man, where
I know. Amazon pays no taxes, right? But imagine if we didn't have an Amazon here, or I try to look like that, but we'll get into that another time. But I know.
Another day, we'll end off here on a positive note of potential Armageddon. I mean, it's not that. I mean, that's uplifting, right?
Come
I'm
on.
going to celebrate 40 with a potential nuclear crisis.
If we didn't go to war with North Korea, which I was kind of worried about, that I got to tell you.
Oh man, you're the only one worried about that
get
one.
the hell out of town.
What is Kim Jong-un going to do? Is he going to fart? And like launch a weapon out of his ass?
Well, you know what we should do.
What should we do?
We should somehow, like you said, like the Tom Clancy novel. We should like get North Korea to fight the Iranians or something like that, and then just kind of set it up and be like, haha, did you see what he just did to you? And then maybe.
What do you do? Like it'd be like
I couldn't be in charge of the country.
I don't know. We can call it the Ayatollah and act like we're Kim Jong Un and go like, "There's people in my house and they're eating all my food," and
haha, motherfucker,
see what happens. Exactly, see what happens.
That was my terrible, maybe even racist impression of
everything is racist nowadays, man.
Well, as soon as I said it, I said, "Oh, damn it!"
Yeah, we can't erase it out.
What was an Asian accent? I can do other accents. I can do the German.
I can do Austrian. That's right. We're going to bomb everybody.
The Russian too. Yeah.
That's right. Why are you laughing at me?
We from Sweden?
Yeah, that's right. All right.
Just for the record, we are available for birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, things like that. We can
Oh shit! All right. On that note, let's just end our misery here. My blood pressure's already raised up. I need to talk about something like good.
You need another drink.
Well, I'm still drinking. I mean, it is a work night. I do have to counsel America tomorrow.
All right.
And tonight. So I'll do my best. Right. All right. Let's end this shit. All right, everyone. Well, that was an uplifting kind of show, right? But hey, it's all right. Sometimes you gotta get truth. You gotta dive into some things that aren't exactly the greatest of things. But hey, that's where the truth is. That's where we're gonna go because that's what we do here in Gray Matters. I'm Michael DeVine. Behalf myself, Bill, the armchair quarterback, my dad.
Mike, are you behind the bombings of these drones? Maybe you're behind it. Maybe you're pulling the strings. Yeah.
On behalf of myself.
Stay off the drugs.
Bill, if I told you once, I told you twice.
I knew it was
coming.
Off the drugs.
All right, everyone. Dad, the professor, he's not here, but we're going to thank him anyway. And that's right, man. This is what we do on the 614 Radio Network. How we do it all day. I'm Michael DeVine, and remember, next time someone asks you, hey, man, you a Democrat? You Republican? You red? You blue? Or whatever other color we can come up with. You just say, fuck that noise. My ass is gray. All right, everyone, you be good to each other. Hopefully we're here next week. Peace.